I'm Peter Leathard. I started in the oil industry in 1967 and was still working at it sort of by the time I'm still sort of in it now, but I ended up retired pretty well in '05. Well, I was going to university and I was approached by I was going in Louisiana, and I was approached by a manager of an oil field that was close by where my mother had a home, and he asked if I wanted to work the summer for them. They'd heard I'd been doing pretty good in school, which I did, and I said yeah. So that's when I went to work for him, and I worked. I stayed connected with ARCO, worked for him and it wasn't ARCO then, it was the Atlantic Richfield North American Producing Division of Atlantic Richfield. I worked in that gas end of the field for that summer, and then the next summer they sent me to Long Beach, California, and I worked in their reservoir engineering section there, doing some work on unitizing the Signal Hill oil field in California, and that's when I first heard about Prudhoe Bay. Well, the big memory was I was there and I heard the news, and I was in the cafeteria, and there's a lady in the cafeteria, worked in the cafeteria, and she'd worked for Richfield for 25 years, and she was just jumping for joy because the stock was going crazy. Yeah. No, had no idea about that. When I joined full time with Atlantic Richfield, they sent me to northern Canada, and I was responsible as the construction engineer up there to put in some roads and put in some pipelines and oversee the building of a production facilities and plant. Of course, the contractors were doing all the work. I was just the ARCO construction engineer representative. And I stayed for a little while. I got married in Canada, and I to a girl that I'd met in New Zealand, and was still married, by the way, after 53 years or so. And I stayed and helped with the operations right for a little while, and then they moved me back to West Texas, and I worked in the big, it was ARCO's biggest oil field at that time in West Texas, and they also, it's Crane, Texas, and they also had a big plant facility there, and so I went there as the plant engineer. And then after that, they asked me if I wanted to come to Dallas, so we moved a lot, and bought a house everywhere we went. And I went to Dallas and was a gas engineer and project evaluation engineer, and worked on different projects, looking at the feasibility of them and the economic feasibility, and getting some of them approved and actually seeing them get completed. These were smaller type projects. Then they asked me to go back to West Texas on another promotion, and I was maintenance manager at the facility when I went back, and I was there just 11 months, and the 74, the pipeline got approved, and they asked me to come to Alaska to be to work with the North Alaskan division up here, and be sort of the representative working with the design team in California. Yeah, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. I knew it was going on, but I had my hands full with what I was doing, and so I didn't pay much attention. I didn't think about asking people, about going to Alaska. But when they approached me, and the money was good, and took my wife up on a house hunting trip, and by that time I had a little one, and took the little one with us, and we actually stayed in the L Street Towers over here until we could get our house built. Yeah. No, I really didn't give it a thought, but I knew, and I didn't know what was in store for me, but I wasn't here long, and they created the Prudhoe Bay organization chart, the top level of it, and they actually promoted me to production services superintendent, which was to be responsible for all of the maintenance on the ARCO facilities, and also the technical services and all the support services. And so, that was good. I got another promotion, and but my job was to work with the design group and making sure what they were doing, from my perspective, was operational, and so you could operate it, and most important, that it could be maintained, that they had enough clearances over the turbines so you could lift the rotors out. Well, other than the problem, there was no housing. The pipeline was a different animal. The operations end of the business for the North Slope was more straightforward, I guess. There wasn't that. The construction end of it was pretty wild. Just like the pipeline construction, they were pretty wild. For example, the Prudhoe Bay operations, we had no women. Women weren't allowed. No alcohol, strictly no alcohol. You were fired if you had alcohol. So it a pretty clean operation. It's just just like if you're going to drive a truck, if you're going to operate a facility, you can't have people hung over the next morning. It's a different sort of environment than the construction. Some of our guys used to sneak over there, but the construction camp. But we'd give them a little lecture, we found out, but that was about it. Well, yes, definitely. But I'd like. There's something that is sort of missed in a lot of the history of the slope. The North Slope, there was some facilities there in 02 and 72. They'd built some facilities. They'd because they were going to be producing, and originally they were going to produce the oil and flare all the gas, and they're going to have a small pipeline. That was that, of course, they were abandoned, but they were built in place. But other than that, there was nothing. I mean, there was no roads. I mean, we went from Dead Horse and a road across to the BP facilities, and that was it. And the wind there was different than it is now. The whiteouts were quite common in the winter. We used to make a joke that, we ain't going to fly out today because the seagulls is flying upside down. So but we had nothing. There was no service, support service. We didn't have contractors up there to support anything. So what we did is set up an organization and I was responsible for my side of that would do everything. We had our own trucking, we had our own vehicle maintenance, we had the own electrical, mechanical, instrument, everything. We set it up so that we would have it. Now, later those services came and we backed away from the non-essential services and used contractors, but that took a while. Oh, it's just like going up there now. It's just like, and I haven't been up there for 3 or 4 years now, but it's like going. It's the difference between going to a remote small farm community somewhere in the boondocks to going to LA City nearly. It's just a massive development up there, and the big difference is you don't have the same whiteouts. And we've also what we did is discover how you could drive on these roads in bad conditions by the reflectors. That was a big program we went through to come up with the right reflectors. But we also had to find people. We had to find all these operators, these heavy equipment. We were going to have on the slope close to 1,000 horsepower of rotating equipment, and collectively, and you got to have people that can operate it and who can maintain it. And these are huge facilities. You've been up there. You know what the facilities are. They're like having refineries indoors, and there's nobody here. I mean, so we had to go find people. We had a big recruiting effort to go south, and I was hiring people associated with what I did, what I was responsible for, and Lee Munch was the other guy, and he was interviewing and hiring operators. But we went to some of the oil fields down south, but the places where we got most of our people were the refineries. We went back east to the refineries. We went Cherry Point Refinery, and we went to the L.A. refineries, and went to Houston, and we had the top recruiter out of the headquarters in L.A., the headquarters for Atlantic Richfield. He was with us, helping us do this stuff, and we made movies about Alaska, and I've got a package there which we handed out to the people. We interviewed not only the person, and I'd interview them for the technical skills, and also whether I thought they were going to be a malcontent or not, and we'd interview their wife. We had their wives come and show them the movie, and try to explain everything about Alaska. Trying to highlight the bad, so that they weren't surprised. But people tend to listen to all the good stuff and don't hear the bad stuff. So we had some problems later on, but not too many. But we ended up, hiring, what we had, 200 or 300 people, in total. We hired a lot from here, but not in some of those real top jobs. Okay, a lot of, the construction was all union, the early construction. And actually the company I went with after that, Vico, we did the first non-union construction job on the slope. But we were going to contract at the time. I said, and we had somebody who had said they would provide the electrical service, because we were concerned about the IBEW. And we were Atlantic Richfield non-union. We were hiring quite a few people out of the refineries and that were union employees, and explain to them, and you have to convince them or explain to them how, they didn't need a union to look after them, that the company was going to look after them, and all that good stuff that we went through. But unfortunately, the contractor that he was doing electrical work for the drilling company was actually doing work for us. This was before the main facilities, but he was doing work for us, and he was all reimbursable for us, all his people, but he was taking lump sum jobs with the drilling, and pocketing all the money. So when I found that out, I brought him in and told him to pack his bags and his people and leave. And so from that point, we hired all our own electricians and instrument people on our own payroll. But right after startup, not long after startup, the IBEW came after us and got enough cards signed for an election. So we had a big campaign to convince that they wanted an election of all the instrumentation and electrical people. We ended up prevailing. It stayed non-union, but it was a tough time for 2 or 3 months. Emotions were pretty high with some of the people. You know how it goes with these union elections. So the unions can say anything, but as management, you got to be careful what you say. It's It was more personal. The money wasn't really the big issue. It was more the fact the unions were going to make sure that they did better in the future and they would be taken care of, and ARCO as a company isn't going to take care of them and that sort of stuff. And, you know, the main organizers in the company, it was contentious at times. We tried to keep it reasonable, you know, and I talked at meetings and talked to the guys a lot on my shift because we were working 7 days on and 7 days off with 2 shifts. There was the blue shift, which I was on. We had the field manager and 3 superintendents, and I was one of them. And on the other shift was the gold shift, and Landon Kelly was my field manager. Les Sellers was the manager on the gold shift. So there was 2 complete separate organizations and 2 complete separate union drive. Well, the same union drive, but you were dealing with different people. So it was difficult. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I left. After I left Prudhoe Bay, I went to. I went on as engineering director on the Northwest Pipeline, the northern facilities of the Northwest Pipeline, and I worked down there in Pasadena for a year. Then at the end of '81, I left. So I left before the bust, the oil bust. So with the oil industry, but we also got hit because the company I went with was, you know, in the oil, you know, supporting the oil industry and doing construction. I was in California for a year, and my responsibilities down there were to oversee the engineering of the northern facilities, and to do quality assurance, and also to get all the permitting, which was quite a big task, and I spent most of my time on that. But we were able to get the permitting all done in a year, and we did it a little different. I'll give you a couple examples. At the time, the North Slope Borough they came down with a ruling that any development in the future, they were going to provide all the potable water. They were going to do all of the garbage, trash stuff, and for a massive project that we were going to have on the North Slope, that was not really practical, and so that was that. Plus, I needed those permits, and I also needed them to participate in helping us with some of the Corps of Engineer permits and stuff that they had input into. So Jake Adams was the borough mayor at that time, and I came up and wrote my guy who with me, and we sat down and I laid out all the drawings, and I said, this is what this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to go on, and we need. And I said, you can't. You need to bypass your ordinances and give us permits to be able to do our own water and our own sewerage and garbage, and also help us with the Corps of Engineers to make sure you support us on those permits. And he looked at me and says, well, what's in it for us? And I said, well, you're going to get all the jobs. We'll give you a lot of jobs. You can have all the jobs you want. He said, no, we're going to get that anyhow. So I said, what do you want? And he said, I want bottled gas for all the villages. And that'd be propane, and probably in the winter a propane ethane mix because of the temperature. And I've done a lot of process engineering, so basically we had a $10 million. We didn't need to go for approval if it was going to cost less than $10 million. So I said, let me go think about this, and I'll come back tomorrow. So I went and I did some scratching and looking at stuff, and I came back and to him the next day, and I said, okay, we can give you what you want. I said, we can put in a depropanizer off the NGL stream, and we can run the lines out and put a loading facility just a little bit away from the plant. But I said, you're going to have to take it from there. And they just got all, they got all excited. It's great. And so we got all the permits. And then I got a hold of my boss in Pasadena, and he was excited. Man, this is great, because they were worried about getting that support from the North Slope Borough. And but the Northwest Pipeline wasn't too happy about it. The guy that was over the community affairs stuff with the pipeline group that was down with Fluor. They were doing the main pipeline. We were doing the northern facilities. He came stomping into the office in Pasadena and went to my boss and started raising hell and wanted to get me fired for doing what I did. My boss kicked him out of the goddamn building. In the early days at Prudhoe Bay, there was no contract group in the division. I think there was one contracts guy that helped write contracts. So we did our own contracts. And if you're dealing, we pretty well did a lot of the same stuff in Dallas. And if you're dealing with honest people that know their business, and you know how to write contracts, or you've got some support to write contracts, and there's a lot of legalized stuff that's typical in every contract, and you just got other stuff you got to fill in. It makes things happen quicker, and in speed, a lot of time is money. I know I liked it because good, I get things done, and if I had people, contractors that I'm doing more in Dallas, if I had design contractors that were doing free designs for me to help me on, get approval for projects and stuff, then I'd make sure that as long as they were in the ballpark financially, I'd make sure they got the damn work. So it was a good way to operate. But unfortunately, there was a lot of people that all these companies that were getting kickbacks and different stuff and that's why they started clamping down and making all these contract organizations, and so people in the field couldn't have their buddies working, and they had to go through the contracts groups. My first Eskimo crew from North Slope Borough that I had in working for me, because we tried to hire and work the natives on the slope. And I mean, in those days, you hear stories today about some of the difficulties, but in those days, it was really difficult because you were totally dealing with the cultural differences. And our supervisor was assigning the Eskimo crew all the time to outside work, and thinking they'd be more comfortable on the outside and doing that sort of stuff, and rather than working in the damn facilities. And I got secretary hollered at me in the office and said, I think it was Eddie Itter, I think his name was. I may be wrong on that. And it's to see you. And so I opened the door, come out, and I said, what's up? And as a typical North Slope native at that time wouldn't look at you, and he just said, "We Eskimos freeze too, you know." So, and so so we made a few changes. We made assignments after that, but it was some interesting times. There's a lot of stories with some of that. Both when I was with ARCO and then later with Vico. Yeah. On the North Slope, well, the North Slope has made so much money. It's very hard to get people to work. I think they're pretty well, for the most part, taken care of, or either through federal or within their own organization. They've got lots of money, so it's difficult. There's a lot of good. They've created some big companies, out of Slope Regional Corporation. So, been very successful. But they've had lots of help, in which it's probably justified. I'm not saying it's not necessarily justified, but they've been able to build big companies, and their people are taken care of. But as far as working in the oil field, I don't think there's that many that do work in the oil fields. At the end of '81, I left. Yeah, I got an offer from Vico Bill Allen. Vico's Bill Allen, that they were in financial trouble. I was in Pasadena when they got a hold of me, and I thought, I'm getting a little bored after you've been involved in what I'd been involved with for the last few years. It was sort of tame, coming to work at 8 and going home at 5. So he gave me a good offer with some ownership, and I said, okay, I'll take it on. Yeah, he was on the North Slope. He'd been on the North Slope. He did rouseabout work on the North Slope, small little projects and labor, and so yeah, I knew him, and he'd worked. The company started in the '60s in the Cook Inlet. Vico did, so he had a long history here, and I had a good reputation of delivering, not of their business-wise, they weren't that good, but they were getting good markup on their rates, so they could be pretty sloppy in those days. I came, and the first thing they had, he'd bought a shipyard and borrowed a lot of money. Well, at that time, you could borrow lots of money, and he'd borrowed lots of money. I think $32 million, and bought a shipyard in Houston on the Ship Channel. And they'd taken under contract 3 submersibles and 2 jackups, and they were horribly underbid. They kept the same management that had got the company in trouble before, so they successfully got the company in trouble again. And I went down there and took it over, and That was at the beginning of '82, and right about that time, Vico took bankruptcy. They ignored what the bank said and paid some local contractors here and didn't pay the bank's interest, and so the banks foreclosed and shut their line down. And they would have been really bad because they had no cash to pay anybody, but Nana stepped in, Willie Hensley with Nana, and on a handshake give Bill $1 million of cash to get till he could get things straightened out as far as getting some cash flow coming. We had a good relationship with Nana. But we ended up. Bill had signed a personal guarantee on all the rigs. It was a mess, but I finally got it all straightened out and hired some good people, and were able to get their rigs delivered for them. But in the process, we had to give up the yard in the process to get Bill off his personal guarantees, and the companies that drilling companies paid. We dealt with Herbert Hunt on Penrod. We had to they had to pay a bunch more money to get their rigs out, but the last one we got out for what we bid. But yes, I was with Vico all the time after that. I came up here after a couple of years after we got their rigs out for them, because that Herbert Hunt asked he would let us give us the money, turn it over, reimbursable, get Bill off the stuff. But one of the provisions was that I'd stay and run the show down there until I got these rigs out. So I agreed to it. So we lived in Houston for a little while, and I came up here, and after a couple of years was made president. And Vico is a good company. We did the first, all the construction was done on the Slope Union, but when the union labor agreement ended, then they turned it open, and we got the first non-union construction job rebuilding Flow Station 3 that blew up, and some of the modules blew up and had to rebuild them. The unions? Oh shit! They come after us everywhere they could. I mean, it was a constant battle, trying to. I mean, we did the Milne Point too. We installed the modules and commissioned the facilities at Milne Point for Conoco, and there the electricians were going to hold a big rally and get everybody stirred up, and so I went in the Slope, and I just told them, I said, who's doing this? And they told me who it was, and I said, put them on the next damn plane. Of course, you can't do that, under the. And they said, "Oh, you can't do that. You can't do that." And I said, "Bullshit! I can do it." I said, "That's what we got lawyers in town for. They ain't going to kill the project, So and that ended the union problem on that project. But we ended up having to put the guys back to work after about 3 years. But sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. No, it was huge. I mean, we were growing pretty good. We got ourselves straightened out. We were growing pretty good as a company, but we had the oil spill cleanup contract on Kenai and so we had trained spill workers there. And Don Cornett was the only Exxon representative in town, and I was driving in because we were working on a bid that weekend. It was Easter, and we were bidding the Antarctic support contract. And I called Don when I heard it on the radio, and said, "What's going on?" He said, "Oh yeah, it's a mess." I said, "Well, you need some help?" And he said, "Oh, do anything you can." I said, "Well, I'll get the guys from Kenai to fly over," and I said, "and I can round up a lot of boom and stuff." He said, "I'll cover you. Just do it. We ended up spending $50 million over that weekend, and just on his word alone, because we had to hire boats, and right after the spill, of course, Exxon was concentrating on offloading the tanker, trying to get the oil, and they did a good job of that to get all the oil they could off that tanker that hit the rock. But there was a lot of oil, a ton of oil in the water, and then there was a storm came in and spread the oil everywhere, and it ended up with the oil covered 1,000 miles of beach, and also went 1,000 miles in distance. So a huge problem, and it was quite a ways. The rock was quite a ways from Valdez. So Exxon had its headquarters in the hotel there, and I went and visited right after the storm, and the president of shipping, Rossi, was there, and so we sat down, and he said, "What do we need?" And I said, "Well, we got no communication." I said, "We can't have boats going back and go down there. It takes 6 hours, and it takes 6 hours to come back. You got 12 hours, and nobody does any work." I said, "We got to have people out down there." I said, "We got to get people there living on living quarters and stuff, and get a combination of camps and barge camps and ships." And I said, "We need a lot of boats." And I said, "We have no communication in down there, so we need communication." I said, "We're going to need to have repeaters on the mountains." I said, "There's no telephone. You had to hold on to a telephone receiver and let the line go, because there was no telephone communications with it was pretty small with Valdez." So I said, "We got to have that." And I said, "We got the otter problem. I said, "We got the bird problem. And he was saying, and he kept saying, 'Can you take care of that? Take care of that. Take care of that.'" Wrote a long list on a piece of paper, and I said, "We can give it to him." He signed it, and we took off, and give him a 2-page contract, which I should have only been one. It's amazing how accountants and auditors have fun with words on pieces of paper. The less you put, the better. But they honored everything, and then we redid the contract as it obviously got bigger and bigger. We redid the contract. We spent in 6 months, run through our books, $2 billion. We hired 12,000 people. We at one time we had with us and contractors we had 9,000 people working. We did a deal with the unions and split the workforce, because we had a union company also, Vico had, Norcon, and we split the workforce with the cleanup offshore, and made a deal with them that we'd give them half the work offshore and the cleanup and we would pay union scale wages to everybody. If they would work under the envelope of Vico, Norcon would be the unions, and Vico would manage the whole thing and do all the onshore stuff, procurement, and all that good stuff. So they agreed to it. So it was a peaceful deal, a sensible deal. We hired 3,000 boats. We had airplanes and helicopters. We had cleanup bases all down in Kodiak, and we put on the little villages. We'd go around and put everybody on the payroll where the oil was coming. It's a lot of money. We ran everything. One of the deals I had with them that we run everything through Alaska suppliers. So we bought stuff from China, all over, but we run it all through local suppliers. And we hired all the people locally. Of course, they weren't all Alaskans, but we hired